Hello, and a very good afternoon to everyone present here. I welcome you all to today's TechGig webinar on shaping the future of fintech with AI, blockchain, and cybersecurity at the core. I'm your host, Khushi, and I'm delighted to have you with us today. To facilitate the session, folks, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker for today's session, Mr. Praveen Ojha, who is currently serving as the Chief Technology Officer at EPAM Systems India. He is a seasoned technology strategist with 24 years of experience across banking, finance, wealth and asset management, payments, and retail banking. At EPAM, he partners with practice and delivery teams to drive next gen tech initiatives spanning AI, blockchain, and digital acceleration while showcasing progress to stakeholders and enabling account growth. He has worked extensively with fintech startups, served on advisory boards, and contributed to cutting edge banking solutions. Certified in blockchain and recognized as an expert in cryptocurrency and cybersecurity, he also holds a master's in computer science and an executive degree from MIT Sloan School of Management, US. It's such a pleasure having you, Praveen, here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome and hello everyone.
So, now about the session, we will explore how AI is being harnessed to deliver smarter, faster, and more inclusive financial services. From driving intelligent automation to enabling personalized customer experiences, AI is reshaping the way fintech solutions are built and delivered. We will also learn how blockchain is evolving as the foundation of trust, transparency, and efficiency in fintech. With its ability to create secure and tamper proof systems, blockchain is unlocking new opportunities in payments, settlements, and beyond, making financial systems more reliable and resilient. And of course, no future of fintech can be imagined without strong cybersecurity measures. As digital finance scales, cybersecurity becomes the backbone of resilience, ensuring protection from threats while maintaining the confidence of businesses and customers alike. So, this conversation is especially relevant for developers, architects, security leaders, and anyone shaping the future of financial technology. So now it's time that we uncover how AI, blockchain, and cybersecurity together are defining the next era of fintech innovation. I would like to notify that this session is scheduled for an hour. The session will feature insights and presentations from our guest speaker. The final 15 minutes will be open for question and answer, so you all can feel free to drop your questions anytime in the Q&A window. So now, without further ado, let's get started. So now moving forward, Praveen, as you see that AI is becoming central to fraud detection, credit scoring, and risk management, how do you think should financial institutions manage the data and processes to comply with the regulatory norms and ethical standards without slowing the adoption?
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you, Khushi, for having me on the show, and really happy to share my experience and share my thoughts around this subject. It's very close to my heart. It's something that I've been pursuing for a very long period of time, and now with the kind of disruptions we are having in the industry on the basis of with the advent of AI, I think the question you have asked is very relevant, specifically from a financial domain perspective. However, Ria, I think I would just ask you to go back to the cover slide, because I think I'll just let you know in terms of when it's more relevant from answering the question standpoint. So from a fraud detection, from cybercrime, as well as the financial institute, I think this is a very pivotal movement. If you look at the research that's going around, we basically get to see that the kind of threats that are emerging in today's market, and the threat vector itself is kind of expanding at a very rapid space. And there is a warning that was sounded by even Gartner that in the next 3 to 5 years you could have some of the largest banks being targeted with AI specific cyber attacks. So I think purely, if you look at it from how the banks are kind of addressing this, we do have a lot of in terms of the architecture, in terms of security patterns, in terms of the design patterns. It basically exists in terms of how we are enabling our applications into the next stage and into the next from a production setup. What's changing now is with the advent of Gen AI and the capabilities that are getting built over it, and because every institution, every organization now wants to get into a space where they want to have better productivity, better analytics, better time to market by using AI capabilities built into some of the core business processes. And that includes, say, processes like risk, compliance, fraud, anti-money laundering as well. And I'll give you an example. For example, if you would want to use the power of AI to quickly onboard your customers, which otherwise takes maybe 2 weeks of time, but if you're using AI capabilities, you could have much faster pattern recognitions, much faster co-linking of data, and then be able to still do it. But while doing, and it's a two-edged sword. So while doing so, it also introduces certain weakness in your overall chain of events, right? So, and your security is as strong as the weakest link that you would essentially have. So when we bring in things like LLMs, we want to make sure that some of the core fundamental principles of design, of architecture to factor in this new change is essentially baked in into right in the beginning, right at the onset. So my advice is, whenever what I see in the financial industry as well as fintechs, and when I speak to people who are driving some of these changes, I ask them to actually have an AI native approach when they're doing this. When I say AI native architecture and design approach, make sure that AI is at the center of and foundation. It's not a fringe element that you can add on top of something right at the end of the thing when you're about to push through the gate and actually launch your product or launch your services to your customers. Instead, it has to be right at the center when you are actually adopting this tool, so that you are able to bake in the right kind of design patterns that are associated with it. Some of the common things that I would suggest over here, if you are architect and developer over there and you want to bring in AI into your landscape, and you want to maybe do some proof of concepts or maybe run some pilots, or maybe you're actually working on a production use case, I think you would need to start looking at things with the lens of, is my data organized, for example, right? Is my data organized in such a fashion that I can actually, run my AI systems on top of it? What is the presence of my legacy systems? Are my legacy systems, in a stage wherein they can actually adopt this technology, or do I have a kind of a bridge to be built before I'm able to actually start using it? And then you would be able to start looking at what kind of guardrails you need, what kind of LLM frameworks you need, so that you're able to responsibly start delivering on top of it. So I think it's a mindset change now. What worked as a very standard way of designing your systems, your architectures in the past, where you could be siloed into it, may not be true, for the systems that are going to be built in, say, 2026 onwards. And this is a change I'm seeing in the industry. 2024 was a lot about proof of concepts. People trying to just get their hands dirty, or saying, well, something new has come in, let me try and let me check whether this kind of works, and doing some demos, doing those kind of innovations. But in 2025, I'm seeing a large part of those POCs have started to take that journey from staging to production, and where now they are actually working with customers, and they're actually working with their businesses to start supporting core business workflows as part of it. That means organizations will have to start building very robust security guardrails. And by meaning security guardrails, is there a thumb rule? Well, your core LLM foundation frameworks have to be there. So whenever you are doing this, you have to ensure that some of these practices, best practices and standards are essentially baked into it. And I'm sure the security infrastructure within enterprises is also being very aware of this. They're being very cautious because Khushi, a lot of things were basically unknown till now. We don't even know the kind of threat it exposes to till it actually happens and realizes. So you can only second guess, saying that we have put in the right kind of, based on what we know. But there are elements that we don't know yet, and the elements of the LLM power that we have to control, even from because if anyone is actually using this to break into a bank's network, also has the ability to use the same tools and technologies available, right? So you have to be guarding against those two. So I think it's a very holistic answer that I'm trying to give over here. But given the scope of what we are trying to address, and I think this is what we can cover. But best practices, standards, foundational models, ensuring that we are baking in security, and your data right at the center of every development that we are doing is some of the advice that I would essentially give to our audience.
Yes, Praveen. And exactly as you mentioned about all these applications and about the data accelerating. So, how do you think with the open banking and API first models accelerating, how can the firms balance interoperability and the speed with data privacy and the regulatory obligations?
Yeah, so I think it is very so open banking and API first model is essentially transforming, right? So I think it was way back in 2016 or 2015, when the cloud became what was, the next state of uh, the transformation that essentially platforms were doing, banking as well, and banks were probably the slowest for the right reason to adopt that, because they were not sure about what's going to happen once the data moves out of their premises into the cloud. And open banking came in at a time wherein you were able to essentially um, expose your banking capabilities to fintechs, who have the much more agility to provide a consolidated view to the customers. The whole paradigm was very consumer focused. It was not about the bank. Banks had to secure their data, secure their networks, but it was very consumer driven, because it is the at the end of the day, it's the customer's data that the banks own. And to generate the maximum insights and value of the customer, should be the banks have to expose that data, so that whether it is a fintech or whether it is any other organization, they have the ability to provide that, monetize that in a way so that the customers benefit from it. So with that kind of a paradigm, but it does open up a lot of chinks in the armor, right, as well, because now you're opening up your core things. And with A2A payments also coming in, I know uh, in terms of interoperability as well, uh, a lot of security measures were already put into place. So in my view, I don't see that to be a big problem to solve in terms of data privacy and regulations at this point in time. The reason, because the regions have kind of fairly come up with their own regulations. Like India is coming up with it already has a regulation in terms of data residency. When cloud was not so prominent, you used to have basic data centers which were only in few countries. So if I'm, say, for example, Citibank, or if I'm, say, HSBC, or one of the largest banks out there, in earlier models, we had these banks basically had two or three or four data centers available. That means the data hosting was always centralized. That also meant that they had a multi-tenant architecture where they were hosting multiple countries' data within their own, within a consolidated region. So Europe may have, maybe there's a data center for one of the banks in London, and that would host the data for entire Europe. Similarly, you would have one of the data center in US, and they would have for the entire region, and same for APAC. But then with all these regulations coming in, data privacy and requirements coming in, with GDPR coming in, they said, the data can't be outside the country. So then that became a whole massive exercise. And then the whole question came in, like, in an API driven economy, what happens to data in motion? What happens to data at rest? What if my API is hosted within the country, but I'm just doing a round trip across the API gateway, and my data is still traveling outside? So these challenges were initially there. But then see what happened. Like in the last 10 years, you saw the advent of cloud, where all these different regions and zones started springing up. You had these AWS outposts coming up, you had GK deployments, you had GCP everywhere. Now practically you have every region kind of covered. So you, if there is a requirement like Switzerland or like China, or like, if India comes up saying that, you got to host my customer data only within the country. Even AWS today has many data centers within India to do that. You don't have to use the servers, which earlier days we had to use the ones that were present either in Hong Kong or in the Middle East, because these are all centralized, right? So now the whole data centers have been become decentralized. So in a lot of manners, I would say we are in a much better space in terms of addressing those requirements. Why? First of all, it's happening at scale, so everyone is adopting that. So it's not like, one bank against the other, that they have a challenge to solve, whereas the others don't have it. It's not that. Secondly, I think regulators are also getting more educated in that sense, right? They were slightly, I would say, slower. But if you look at it in the last 4 or 5 years, even Swiss regulators have kind of opened up to the idea of having, open banking APIs being hosted outside, as long as it's all transactional data, right? As far as you don't have customer identifying data, PII data, there is a lot of latitude now available to even regions which were considered to be extremely highly regulated and, very sensitive to data being moved out, to such a point that, they used to have their own replicated data centers so that none of the applications move outside. But you can't. We are in a very connected world now, right? In a digital connected world. If I am, for example, a large company who wants to do business, we don't no longer do business only in one region. We have the ability to do business all over the world. So that means my banking needs should be able to give me a 360-degree view of everything. So if I have to have a 360-degree view, I need to pull in data from everywhere, from every corner of the globe. So unless and until regulators allow that, how will I bring everything together, right? So you see that, people are able to do that. Earlier, it was very difficult. So it's changing in that sense. Regulators are, also adapting to this change. Regulators are also adapting to the change that AI is bringing in. Okay, it's I would, for me, if the regulators are more up to date than the technology and the fintechs, it gives us much more latitude to experiment. Versus if you're stuck in a situation where regulators are, stuck in 10 years back, then they will stop your growth, because they will not be able to keep pace with the change in technology that's happening. But fortunately for us, we see that, that space is also moving very fast. Regulatory technology is also getting up to speed, and I'm very excited to see how that happens in the next few years, when it comes to with the whole agentic AI coming into picture, and explainability coming into question, what we see on the screen in terms of state of agentic AI. Uh, Ria, if I can maybe just go a couple of slides ahead, I just wanted to, in the reference of this question itself, maybe a few, yeah, this one, right? If you can just go a bit behind, one slide back. Yeah. So you see how we have transitioned from a rule-based system, which earlier was very simple. So regulators understood that, like, there is data, there is process flow, and there is an automation script. And they used to come and say that, give me your output of an automation script. Very simple, kind of a one-trick pony. That my automation script is always going to do the same thing. It's not going to keep changing the way it behaves, right? Because it has been programmed to behave in one way. Then we went, said that, oh, hang on, I think I know some patterns that, that these automation scripts are running. So let me kind of like automate this on the basis of 6 or 7 patterns. And that became the kind of advent for machine learning and deep learning on systems, right? So you started looking at even unstructured data, you started looking at even images and stuff, right? Almost 7 8 years back, you knew that if there are systems that could recognize a photo and say that, okay, that's the Eiffel Tower on it, right? So all these things are nothing but more intelligence built into the system. Till in 2022, of course, we were hit by the truck by with generative AI systems, with Chat GPT getting launched, and that too, after almost 3 or 4 years, based on the transformer architecture. I'm sure people over here know that there was a paper published by Google where, the name of the paper was, "Attention is all you need." That paper essentially gave birth to the transformer architecture, But it wasn't Google who made use of that. It was OpenAI who created the ChatGPT model based on the transformer architecture and released it in 2022. And then we had the disruption saying that, hang on, we don't need massive organization data. Here is a model which is trained on the world's data, right? But it had a cutoff date. And then we moved to the agentic AI systems. So you see that the disruption that is happening at such a rapid pace. So regulators will also take some time in that sense, Kushi. So I've given a very, very long, winding answer to you. So I hope it still answers, in terms of what I wanted to convey, because I know the question was very specific when it comes to API models accelerating and data privacy and regulatory compliance. But I see these kind of challenges now emerging as well on that front.
Yes, Praveen, and you clearly also mentioned that how we have moved from the rule-based systems to the machine learning and then to Gen AI and now to agentic AI with all of these, technology evolving and data centers and decentralization evolving. So on this front, how do you feel that as safeguarding is the need of the hour in these areas like A2A payments and multi-cloud platforms? What
Mhm.
do you think are the architectural safeguards that are most critical to mitigate the cyber risks while keeping services seamless and maybe user friendly?
Um, so A2A payments, right? So when it comes to it, it's basically account to account. It could be multi-cloud. It could be, firms, that basically are now removing the need because there is a requirement for time to market, right, Kushi? So
Yes.
banks say that, we don't want every payment to go to clearing houses. It's like pouring, it's like yawn, right? So it's completely, and India in that sense is also galloping. We are probably one of the fastest and the quickest adopter of digital technology. I mean, the advent has been massive, and now A2A is being very largely getting implemented across. We have RBI regulations also when it comes to it. So uh, I think but it again, like you said, it has some challenges associated with it. So from a safeguarding perspective, uh, first of all, like, I see a use of what we see on the screen, that is agentic AI systems. If you have systems which can trace and track this at, real time or near real time, in terms of, are there any because all these systems that are doing these transfers, they are also getting upgraded. So every line of code getting added is kind of, has the potential of creating any sort of a chinks in the armor as well. So instead of waiting till the last time, because see, typically in SDLC, what happened is, before going into production, we used to have a design review and security review and saying that, hey, is everything okay? So that is done almost at the end of everything. So it's too little, too late, if you ask me in today's time. But with agentic AI, you can actually have an AI watching you while you write the code. And if the moment you write something crazy, which has the potential to breach based on the safety and security guidelines that has been associated, it could be a RAG or a vector DB within your own organization. It could be a security policy. It could be a design principle. It could be an architecture principle. It could be a repository within the organization that you have now kind of made it into a database. Okay. But you can use that as the reference point to, in real time, check and put balances to when the developer is actually writing the code, right? So that is AI SDLC, right? So you can bring those inputs into bringing those kind of safeguards into it. At the same time, I would also bring in, like, follow your basic good strong architectural practices like end-to-end data encryption. Maybe use TLS 1.3 or higher when for data when it is in transit. When it is data at rest, encrypt it with AES 256 or equivalent, right? Anything that is there. Implement tokenization, implement masking of data, masking of sensitive, follow specific standards, like, if you're storing card information, PCI DSS, all these things are, pretty much, you can say, commoditized in the sense. Use mutual TLS for strong authentications. Have a zero trust security framework when you're doing account to account, because you don't have a room to fail, because from, in terms of it. But I think most importantly, ensure asset compliance in A2A. when you're doing that. When I say asset compliance, means asset transactions. So atomicity has to be essentially maintained, right? Integrity has to be maintained from a data standpoint. So when you're looking at that, that means it's either the transaction has to be zero or complete. So either everything gets rolled back or everything gets committed, so that transaction is not left in the lurch because there is no central bank or no clearing house in between to get you out of the hook, if I may.
Yes. So, of course, these very deep insights on how actually architectural safeguarding is actually, we can move ahead with this particular perspective from this. So, moving forward, next, I would like to take you to the segment of how we see MCP and A2A changing the agentic AI solutions and architectures. And how do you see fintechs and financial institutions using these technologies in the production deployment, particularly with the explainability, maybe the monitoring and the legacy integration?
Hmm. So yeah, I think I'll need Ria's help here as well. Ria, if you can maybe move to the next one. You can move ahead as well, even ahead. uh, yeah, these are some of the challenges, but I would still skip. Yeah, so let's look at this, right? So these are the two really upcoming trends that we see from the marketplace, right? When it comes to model context protocol and the agent to agent protocol. It's transforming in a way because, see, when you're using Gen AI capabilities, you will know that Gen AI models are always trained to a particular date, right? And then what do you do with latest info? For example, if I ask an LLM model to give me, if I or Gemini model to give me a Google Maps direction from say Pune to Goa, it will give me the direction what it knew till the time it was trained. It won't give me the current one, right? So I need to have a way in my model to know what my current direction is. Don't tell me what was there in 2022, right? For that matter. So in that sense, we have a way using MCP, where you can actually connect. So MCP is basically a protocol. It is, let us not confuse it with anything else. It's basically yeah, you can just be on the slide. It is basically a protocol enabling your agents to securely interact with external data sources. When I say external data sources, it's exactly the example that I gave. So you can talk to your Google Maps in real time, right? It's an external data source, but it is not relying on what the model has been trained on. But just look at how it has happened. You're using an AI LLM based agent that has been created where you are using NLP, saying that, natural language that give me the best path on the road on how do I get from, say, Pune to Goa or Pune to Bangalore. And then the LLM itself, the agent is actually spinning off another thread, hitting a Google API, bringing in the latest information and showing it, in terms of a map grid, all as part of a workflow that I'm doing. So this is where it becomes very powerful because it makes your LLM responses much more contextual, much more relevant to the context that it is and the environment and ecosystem it is currently working in. And you can have your essential tools exposed as MCP server. It can be discoverable. So if somebody has already created something like this, like a Google Map MCP tool available, or think about it with some more complex things, say like somebody has created a tax calculation a module, right, and has actually with the latest tax calculation based on the changes that happened last night, say, suppose. And then you still have and somebody has already done that, then you can discover that particular tool, you can bring it within the context of your enterprise solution, and you can start using it. So I think you can do resource discovery, you can do tool execution, you can do context aware retrieval, all these kind of things, your error recovery, state management, all these things. So it kind of like changes and transforms the way to it. Now, if you just move on to the next. Yeah. So, and what is agent to agent, right? So, agent to agent is like, think about like, if I have, it's again a protocol. Don't think about it as like a technology. You can't implement it like a thing. Think about it like a communication protocol you're going to be soon everyone is building their agents, right? So, and you need to have a way of communicating to them in a standard particular way. So earlier when services had to talk to each other, we came up with SOAP, we came up with web services, we moved to, APIs, and the way, even if you look at payments, for example, right? So you have Swift as one of the methods. So what does Swift do? It basically gives a standard way of communication for any global payments that has to happen anywhere in the world. And everybody who is on subscribe to the Swift network basically says that, every time that we have to do a transaction, we will commit to the usage of that same structure. A2A is nothing but that. It is nothing but a protocol wherein you're enabling direct interaction between agents. So if I am organization A and there's another organization B, both have developed agents to actually work as part of a business capability, then these agents are basically in the A2A protocol giving a handshake saying that this is the way we are going to work on it. This is the way how I'm going to identify it. This is the way how your message is going to be sent. And it is accompanied. And when you're using an A2A protocol, every agent gets an identity card, like how we have, right? When we enter our offices, we have an ID card. So the agent has an agent card, right? And agent card has got basically the name, the purpose, what it does, where it's registered, who created it, what last date of creation, what kind. So some details around what that agent does. So it gives you certain guardrails, gives you certain identity, and it has if everyone is essentially using it, then they're following a very standard way of collaborating. So that essentially is what it essentially A2A protocol does. MCP and A2A are slightly different in the, they're not like interchangeable in the sense that MCP is used to integrate with external data sources, and agent is a protocol that is used to communicate in a standard way with other agents, right? So that's essentially the uh, high level difference between these two, Kushi.
Yes, Praveen. And clearly, as you mentioned, that how MCP and the A2A changing agentic AI solutions, they actually require all these modernizing with the architectures.
And
And
I think you also mentioned around the explainability monitoring as well. So I think that I would just want to touch base upon that is very important now, because uh, models have a very particular behavior, that is they hallucinate, right? Unfortunately, I haven't seen a model which says that I don't know. They will always say that, they'll create and be, they'll be very creative in kind of coming up with a response which may or may not be very relevant. So, in order to do that, there are evaluation frameworks which are getting built. So I would let our audience know that, understand these evaluation frameworks. They come from LangChain, LangGraph. Any agentic platform that is out there also has specific evaluation frameworks. We have Open Eval from Microsoft Azure, which is also a very widely used evaluation framework. What these frameworks essentially do is they evaluate the outcome and give a confidence score on what the LLM has actually given you as a response. So, how confident it is it hallucinating or not hallucinating? That will help you determine whether you need to bring a human in the loop to verify what has been as an output. Because think about it, like in life sciences, if you're doing research around, say, patient safety, right, or drug trials, you can't just let the agent do everything and come up with decisions and come up with what it needs to do and just move ahead with it, right? You need to have very strong evaluation criteria, and because evaluation comes into the picture, it helps in explainability means why, giving the reasons on why it arrived at an answer, right? So that is what it essentially does. So those safeguards are, there are frameworks that are available that I would suggest, if we have folks in the audience, like architecture as well as senior developers who would definitely, who are using LLMs in a big way, then don't just trust whatever outputs you get. You would have to, I've seen enterprises getting into enterprise licenses now for evaluation frameworks to help in kind of determining that. Yeah.
yes, Praveen, and you clearly covered this part about how, with explainability, monitoring, and with the legacy integration, we can actually go ahead and adapt this evolving agentic AI solutions architectural point of view.
Absolutely.
So, Of course, with this question moving forward, I would also like to ask that how do you feel that these engineering partners like EPAM help the financial institutions modernize the architectures, and they can also help integrate AI, secure data, APIs, and blockchain all at one place so that the resilience and compliance are also built in while still driving the business growth?
Yeah. It's a very interesting question, Kushi. So I'll break it down. Ria, sorry to bother you again, but I think you can bring down the PPT. I think we have covered the slides as such. So yeah, so I think see when it comes to engineering partners like EPAM, we there is a specific capabilities, right? See, banks are highly regulated, or any industry. If you look at it, healthcare is also very regulated, insurance is regulated, even manufacturing, if you look at it, they also deal with payments. At the end of the day, everyone is doing financial transactions. That's what they are doing in the businesses for, right? So and compliance and risk is everywhere, right? uh, the partners such as EPAM, basically what it enables us, we are not shackled by what can be done in the area of AI in terms of experimentation, right? So from a regulatory perspective, so I worked with banks for a longest period of my time, and to be honest, experimentation was very low because everything was like, can I do this because it may just expose or increase my attack vector, so might as well don't do it. So you are rewarded for sometimes not doing things. Okay, because oh, you have prevented, by not doing, you have prevented something big from happening, so good. you know but then what does it also slows down innovation. But if banks partner with companies like EPAM, or these organizations very restricted, we have we have kind of sandbox environments where we can really play around with the kind of use cases that may or may not work with the bank. Okay, we have the luxury to fail in the environment, fail fast, recover, pivot, and move towards success in terms of what works. The same thing if you want to do from a process centric into these organizations, it's very difficult because they have very long winding processes. Sometimes it could take like months just to get some basic approvals in place, right? So to get into something, into even into a conceptualizing to staging stage, right? The budgets and all that. But from our standpoint, we have environments, we have labs. Like in EPAM, we have the garage, we have material labs. In the garage, basically we have complete AI lab built in a garage, wherein we have cloud VMs, everything associated for every employee who can just come in, spin off servers, spin off their LLMs, and they will get access using our platform called Dial to all the cutting edge LLMs, including image LLMs, image creations, vision creations, NLP. All these models are available as a platform. They can experiment on any proof of concepts, whether it's banking, whether it's automobile, whether it's insurance. And we do it for like 2 or 3 weeks. The person can go ahead, get their hands dirty in the lab, in the garage. So it's like really a garage, like, innovation where has happened a lot in the garage. EPAM as an organization also started from somewhere, like how Google did, from the garage. So, we have a lot of respect for that as a lab. And but this is something that we get the flexibility to do. So I think, and the innovation that we learn over here, we can take back to our customers, saying that this is what is the art of possible, within your domain, within your area of work, and partner with them in terms of achieving. So then they can bring in the domain knowledge, and we can bring in the technological knowledge, and then jointly, essentially, we kind of carve out the right kind of business solutions for them. So I think that's how I see the link really working, Kushi.
Yes, Praveen. And as we move towards the end, is there any advice that you would, give that to all our budding developers who are actually looking out for all these from your personal experience and from your personal perspective?
I think the advice that I would tell everyone is, uh, go back and start getting hands-on again. Okay, so and that applied to me. After so many decades in the industry, AI has pushed me, and I'm so excited about it now that After years, I'm again getting hands on with development, with coding, with actually, and that was my happy space. I don't think I've been ever more happier than when I was coding in my professional career, because a lot of times you're just managing stakeholders, and sometimes I used to feel that when I was coding, the noise used to cut out, and this was the best thing that I used to do, and I used to love doing that. And it's getting back to that. Be AI native in whatever you are doing. Think AI first. So no matter what the problem statement is, in EPAM, that's the strategy we have. That's the goal. That's the vision. Right, our CEO, we have the vision to be an AI native and AI first company. So whenever you look at a problem, think about how AI can be used to solve it. uh, Believe me, you will. AI is not going to take your jobs. AI is only going to enable you. Uh, yeah, you might lose your job to somebody who knows AI, but not AI. Okay, so if you are left behind, then yeah, because that's where the industry is hitting. It's something which is new. You will be able to reap huge rewards if you do it, because uh, people have missed the cloud bus, people have missed the .com bus, and I would suggest that don't miss this one. This is something, the wave is coming, it's getting bigger, it's getting more interesting, and it's only going to be very exciting times in the IT industry, I would say. So that's the advice I would suggest: be hands on, be AI native, and be as close to technology as possible.
Yes, and of course, this one is definitely the best one to go ahead with all these evolving landscapes in tech, in digital, and of course with the agentic AI coming in the picture, with a lot of challenges and opportunities along that it is bringing. It is really great to see that our landscape are evolving, and of course we have to get along with the traditions also, as it is always high time that we keep reskilling and relearning all of the things that we have been actively practicing and actively positioning ourselves for.
Yeah.
So a big thank you to Praveen, to you, for sharing such forward-looking perspectives on how AI can enable smarter financial services, how blockchain is redefining trust and transparency, and why cybersecurity must remain at the heart of resilient digital finance. From embedding trust into systems to fostering innovation that is both secure and scalable. This session has really given us plenty to think about. And we've also received some excellent questions from the audience that we now like to take them, that are also available in the question panel for your reference. I'll read it out for them. So the first one is that, does the use of MCP by default ensure secure access?
No. So see, security is essentially by design that you'll have to build in, and you'll have to just, like I said, once you have your uh, the foundational LLM in place. So when you're doing an AI native design, so the first thing that you would think about, Suresh, is you would bring in a hub kind of a model, wherein, so that any LLM interaction happens through that facade, and you are basically using the capability. Now, when you're using MCP, so it is not going to directly, because it's just a protocol, right? Like HTTP, like TCP/IP, everything, but we still have to secure them. HTTP also has HTTPS. Your network, your TCP also has, your transport level security, that is your TLS security, essentially baked in. So this has to be under the overall umbrella of your secure LLM, secure AI that you are essentially going to build, and a lot of that is essentially comes in from your foundational framework itself. Like I said, EPAM has Dial. Most of the organizations are building their own, because Dial is kind of an open source. We are giving it to our enterprises for, we're not charging them anything, because this is the foundation. Unless you have a foundation, but security has to be part of your foundation, and MCP is a capability that you build to integrate with your external data sources, right? But in order to do that, you will still follow the same security guardrails that has been laid down by your foundation frameworks. So that we'll have to continue to do,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Right. So the next question is by Shruti. She's asking that, so A2A is essentially an API only and independent of platform and environment, right? Or how is the design or implementation of this protocol per se?
So, good question, Shruti. It's something which is very new at the moment, and it's See, the interaction always happens via the API. Okay. So I wouldn't say that, but think about it. Like today, how we do it, we do point to point. Now, what we thought was a distributed architecture is actually a point to point when you look at A to A. How come? Well, if I have an agent from my side, okay, and think about it, I'm doing a booking.com. Okay. Now booking.com has got create say A to A agents, and my agent has to now talk to me. So I create a Praveen agent for me, personal agent, because I don't want to deal with all, I want to reduce the noise in my life and I want to outsource all my travel bookings to this agent. Okay. So this
Definitely.
Praveen agent that I've developed now wants to talk to booking.com. Now booking.com is also, there's nobody over there. They have created five agents. One is for hotel booking, one is for itinerary, one is for cab booking, one is for air booking and all that, right?
Yeah.
Now, from a front facing, they will create another agent. So the booking agent will talk to Praveen agent, right? Now, Praveen agent is just going to talk in English. So it is going to give via the A2A protocol, the set of standards that it has to hit. That will go via a kind of the from a A2A protocol itself, because it will know where it's hosted. It is discoverable. So, it is going to hit it via that same protocol. The A2A agent that it has got it will then determine which API to call in the backend. Because at the end, whatever systems booking.com has, all these, massive level of systems of Make My Trip, or they have these, legacy systems that they would be having behind the scenes, would expose API endpoints like, get me cab data, get me hotel data, get me payments data, and all this kind of stuff, get me past history, of Praveen and Praveen's travel and stuff to build the itinerary. But none of those things I need to know or my agent needs to know. It is only going to talk agent to agent, and this agent on the booking.com is going to be leveraging the API economy that has been built already onto the booking.com, right? And then it would essentially collate, get all the information. If it feels that the information that it has got from the APIs is not relevant, it is intelligent enough in an agentic flow to kickstart the new workflow and say that, hang on, I need more data. And it will again either fire up another agent on their side or it will call another API call. So very exciting, right? In terms of how it could be done. And from a consumer perspective, I have just asked Praveen agent that, hey, you know what, just build me this itinerary. I need to go here. And but this is what is happening in the background. So I hope I answered that. But always hit me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out if there's any further doubts that you may have. It's There's only as much as what we can cover, on the technical in
That
within
was
this.
a very amazing real life example to quote also, and to make it understand very easily for us. Of course. So moving forward with the next question, it is that budgeting is big challenge while using AI capabilities and becoming more of an aftermath. So any strategy to crisply calculate the cost of AI services in this business process?
Yeah. So few architecture practices I would certainly tell you. First of all, from a foundation standpoint, put some guardrails around what should be the size of, get some ring fencing around the size of the request that you're getting. Okay. So some things that I had done from an architecture perspective was not to keep it very open-ended, saying that don't ask a question which is going to give me like a massive response, which is going to consume huge amount of tokens. Okay, don't do that. So the moment something is coming in, how we used to do pagination in the older days, just apply the similar kind of a logic in terms of ensuring that you are getting relevant information, and the questions and the ask in terms of the business process workflow has to be very contextual. Okay. So rather than a very broad base, so that it doesn't throw a book at you, right? And you're spending so much of tokens on kind of doing it. Secondly, plan for short term memory and long term memory, persistence. Okay. So that when you have repeated questions coming in, build in, so you design and architect in such a way that you have short term memory built in for your processing logic of the workflow itself, and then long term memory from an agent flow perspective, knowing that the agent has already asked and answered these kind of questions. It's already here, the data is already here. You kind of store it within your own environment, so that instead of hitting the LLMs, you process and use it from the same data points. uh, Thirdly, I would say have a very strong FinOps and agent ops. So agent ops is a new thing, right? It's a new concept. So how do you manage your agent? So tomorrow, when you need to have an orchestrator, a platform that can have agents coming in. It should have. So you're going to give a task that do a booking. That orchestrator should figure out which agent has the capability to actually do the booking, which agent has the capability to block, say, a restaurant for me, or to find something else. Task specific orchestration has to be there, and because of this you have to optimize. Then you will be able to reach somewhere around 15 to 30% of cost savings, by having very strong control on which agents have to do what work, so that you're not firing in empty bullets by running across agents and assigning agents tasks which are not actually tuned to do that set of job for you. Okay, so agent ops important, and financial ops, making sure that what sort of cloud hosting mechanisms you're going to need, some guardrails. Focus on FinOps and agent ops. Read on that. There's It's a very upcoming topic, very relevant. If you have an head start in that, it'll help you a lot in designing that.
Yes, Praveen, and definitely these are actually the calculated steps that we can take with these services to initiate the AI in this business process, to be very honest. Of course. So moving forward with the next one, we'll take the last two questions. So the next one is that as fintech ecosystems become more interconnected, what new cybersecurity risks are emerging, and how can organizations build resilience without slowing down their innovation?
Right. So I think, Samir, yeah. So I think this is part of it was, answered as one of the questions that Khushi had pointed out. So I think some of the thumb rules remain the same, right? Because if a fintech ecosystem is going to get connected, but at the same time, it's also getting ring fenced. So make sure that we have very clearly defined domain boundaries, right? And that domain boundaries have to be ring fenced from a network perimeter. So there are some thumb rules that we follow, that no matter what happens, we don't have to have everything, so zero trust. So whenever you have multiple players talking, like, as a fintech, if I have to interact with five or different things, ensure that you have zero trust in terms of the perimeter security. So when you have zero trust, automatically, I'm telling you, when you sit down, you will get to know that these are four or five things you'll need to do. Okay, I won't reiterate that, but those are pretty standard thumb rules things that you're. Secondly, don't have cross organizations workflows being driven by, say, one agent. Have audit traceability. That means, do a job, record it, do a job, but there has to be one central place. So if, for example, if the bank is the central place, and then there are like six or seven fintechs which are participating in a workflow for the bank, ensure that the bank has the complete set of audit traceability on which agent or which fintech did what. The reason I'm saying is the bank may may initiate a workflow, and this has happened with me, I'm telling you. So I won't name the bank. I mean, that was part of my learnings of bad architecture design, wherein there were some organizations where were directly talking about the workflow, and two or three steps were happening between them, and none of those steps made back to the bank. And then we had the audit traceability and said, how did you arrive at this? I was like, oh, well, they were talking, because it was part of the process. It was all in the back end. So then I realized, okay, I need to have this like a, what do you call, not the fist, but the panja, like, where the bank is at the center, and then you have these fintechs coming in, but everything is connected at the palm, right? So this is where your audit traceability is maintained, so that and I think this becomes a kind of your core to building that resilience, around this. It won't slow down innovation. I don't see that, because this is a very common thing, that the adaptability is now very large when it comes to a disparate ecosystem.
Yes, Praveen, and definitely this example is something that we'll always remember because it was actually some real life tricks of making people, relate to that particular incident that we were talking about. So now the next question would be that what metrics or KPIs do you use to measure success or progress in such integrated technology initiatives?
Yeah, I think very good question. For me, NFR's metrics is very important. So non-functional, the downtime, the uptime, the number of tickets that is getting raised. So, for example, uh, if I mean, I'm just talking about general right now. I'll come to AI in a bit, in terms of monitoring, because there are specific tools for it. But in general, I think the NFR metrics, the monitoring that we actually build into place, whether it's, whether you use App Dynamics, whether you use Elk, whether you use Splunk, whether you use all these different platforms, on Google as well as on Amazon, to essentially measure uh, what's happening from the NFR perspective is very important. The non-NFR bit is basically time to market, and is my business happy? And a lot of this is not tangible, but it is more about communicating with the business, knowing how, if my application is resilient, that means if my NFR is done, if I'm able to meet my business, and how quickly am I able to adopt. That means if a business comes and says that, I need to offer another thing, another service to my customer, how quickly can you do it? And if I say it's going to take 6 months, bye bye, see me after 6 months, then that means I've really kind of like messed around with that. So I think those are some of the things that you need to, from an agent, and from an agentic AI perspective, the monitoring. There are many other tools which are coming up like that on the cloud as well, that you need to bake into it. But happy to maybe talk about it offline as well, because it's a very broad subject, in terms of how that measurement happens. But yeah, as a very high level gist, this is what I can share.
Yeah, Praveen. And let's take the last question. You can answer that in short. So that what skills or certifications should professionals prioritize today to build a strong career in fintech?
I think domain expertise is very important, because when you're building these solutions, I don't think this is independent of domain. So, for example, I can't build a real-time solution in an asset management world, and unless you know the domain, you won't know what I meant. Right. So the reason being, because asset management domain has got transactions which span across multiple days. So how can I build a real-time solution? So, you need to know the domain quite well, in terms of where you are doing it, what you are building it for, understand the customers you are building it for, and what problems, and be a little bit forward-looking in terms of where that industry is heading, what disruptions are happening in that. Like, in asset management world, I can give you an example that the new generation of millionaires and billionaires are coming in, who are managing global wealth, right? So they are not like their fathers or grandfathers, who used to work with advisors on the phone once in a year and figure out the investments. They are hands on, they have digital devices, they are all so digitally native. They want to have the ability to do the transaction and trades on their own, right? So you would automatically know that if this is the change that is happening, then what does my product need to support from a fintech perspective, right? Secondly, prepare yourself for scale, because the enterprises that are going to use your fintech solutions are working at a specific scale. I have been part of fintechs, I've been part of advisory boards, and I've seen some of them fail, I've seen some of them succeed. And one of the clear reasons why some of them have kind of like failed, in my view, that they haven't planned. They have planned for the feature, like, they are able to do a capability very well, but for a bank, it's more important that how to de-risk. They would rather not build that capability than to introduce a problem area. So for, in terms of how are you going to scale it within the environment of the bank, or to the level of that, I think is going to be something which is very, very critical. And you need to be having very strong capabilities built around that, to show that you can scale, in terms of operations, in terms of auditability, in terms of security. So it should not happen that, uh, well, you didn't have the people, somebody was on leave, so nobody could fix the security issue that came up. So, and I've been part of fintechs. I know the challenges. I know, I've seen some of the struggles that have gone through it. But there are ways in terms of how you can build, but design for scale. I think that's something which is very important, because at least from a fintech standpoint, as well, if you're successful already, no worries. If you're still struggling in terms of your startup in the fintech space, then this becomes a kind of a huge hindrance, in my view.
Yes, and very, deeply you have explained to us from your personal expertise about this process and how we can actually go ahead building a strong career and also shaping the future of fintech with AI and blockchain. So a lot of questions, but all of them answered. And with that, we wrap up this highly insightful session on shaping the future of fintech with AI, blockchain, and cybersecurity at the core. Thank you so much once again, Praveen, for such an empowering and thought provoking session. It was really an absolute pleasure hosting you and hearing from your personal expertise about this very insights and perspectives. And also, a heartfelt thanks as well to all our wonderful participants for your engagement and thoughtful questions, which made today's session a great success.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kushi, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Praveen. And the session has been recorded, and the recording will soon be available on techgig.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in our upcoming sessions.